Hello, Dr. Tan, Dr. Bischoff, and Mr. Colenso. In this video, I would like to discuss the problem statement of this study, as well as the way in which I implemented the flipped classroom approach in my research. To first start with the problem statement, it's important to first understand the need for this study. In looking at past assessment data on the New York State Physics Regents exam, students roughly 10 years ago predominantly scored in the 90 to 95% pass rate range, whereas in recent years, students are predominantly scoring in the 60 to 65% pass rate range on the New York State Regents Physics test. What this indicates is that students of this current generation are not learning as well as students of previous years. So in terms of trying to address this issue, I've identified a potential source for students' decline in achievement and motivation, and that is the way in which they gather information. In this study, I implemented a flipped classroom approach to try and address the deficiencies in student learning that are exhibited as a result of, in my prediction, them gathering content through a means that they're not familiar with. Students of past generations were used to sitting for long periods of time, listening to lecture to gather knowledge. Their predominant source of gathering information was through books and occasionally the internet, but the wealth of information available back then was not the same as the wealth of information available today. Today's students are used to getting knowledge instantly at their fingertips through the use of their smartphones and their other electronic devices. The flipped classroom model focuses on giving students access to that instant gratification, or that ability to directly refer to and observe lecture content, as opposed to having to sit through long drawn-out lectures in class. So the overwhelming problem statement of this study is that students have exhibited decreased motivation and achievement in regards to their physics learning. So it's important for this study to try and find a means of solving that. So building off of my predictions, the goal of this study was to check or test the effectiveness of the flipped classroom approach in meeting the needs of today's students. The goal of this was to see whether or not the flipped classroom could directly correlate to an improvement in student achievement and motivation. The way in which I implemented the flipped classroom approach was actually through a series of teacher-made video lectures similar to the lecture you're watching right now. These lectures were based off of the Friday Institute as part of the North Carolina State University. In 2010 to 2013, they performed the Phys project, which refers to essentially teachers who were required to make these one-take video lectures as part of an experiment to see whether or not it would help improve student performance. I was attracted to this approach because it took away some of the largest barriers in terms of implementing a flipped classroom model. It made it easy for me to create lecture content, and it made it easy for me to directly connect with my students. It didn't take away that face-to-face aspect that you would with some of the other forms of flipping. And it also still keeps me as the central instructor within my students' learning. I am still the one providing their instruction, and they experienced a connection with that in watching these videos. Now, furthermore, the transition of the teacher-made lecture videos allows students to focus on an increased amount of student-centered learning tasks. Basically, enabling students to work together to apply their knowledge to achieve a common goal. This takes the instructor out of the primary role of delivering knowledge and puts the instructor into a more facilitating role in terms of assisting students and making sure students have the tools that they need for success. That's my study in a brief snapshot. I will continue forward with our discussion in my thesis presentation.